Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter.
It's 3 o'clock. Songs of Praise from Abbey Wood in southeast London is the next programme on BBC One, and that's at 3:15. In the meantime, we're returning to a trade test transmission.
Was that little girl really you?
Yes.
This is a test card, but I'm sure you knew that. For decades, the image of a test card, particularly this one, Test Card F, was a common sight on British televisions all across the country, and even in some other territories around the world. The concept of a test card had been around since the early days of television, but during the 1960s, a sort of standard was gradually adopted. However, in 1967, colour television finally arrived in the UK. And with it, a brand new test card, one that showed off and would help viewers and traders alike calibrate their new colour sets, would have to be designed and implemented. And this is how Test Card F came to be, featuring the iconic image of a young Carol Hersey and her clown Bubbles, playing a game of noughts and crosses. This image has been parodied and used extensively to symbolise the golden age of television, and Carol herself is still to this day one of the most viewed people on TV ever, thanks to her starring shot on the test card.
Now is the winter of our discontent, may glorious tomorrow the son of your
Used often during downtime, or just before startup, or just after close down, Test Card F would not only become memorable for its imagery, but for the selections of music that it featured across the decades. This would often be very pleasant, very calming tunes, to create a welcoming feel for audiences, and was also probably what was available in public domain archives for the BBC to use again and again. But when looking back, several people comment that the music was often the part about the test card airing that they enjoyed the most. Similar to CFAX, the music was the backbone of this oddity of the analogue age, and it has gone on to be remembered fondly and gained quite the following. So it may come as no surprise that viewers wrote in their droves to the BBC's records department, demanding that a full vinyl LP of music selections heard on the test card be released to the public. In 1973, a full 6 years after Test Card F debuted in its full colour glory for the first time, the BBC dutifully obliged. Sort of. This is Girl on the Test Card, a fully fledged vinyl album released on the BBC Records label in 1973. You can see from the front cover, largely taken up by Test Card F itself, featuring Carol and Bubbles, complete with the BBC logo at the bottom. This does seem to be the real deal. Now, if you'd have seen this in your local record shop and thought this was finally the chance to own and listen to those test card classics, you may have been slightly disappointed. For under the title, there's a line that reads, Pete Winslow and the King Size Brass. This is the team who performed the tracks within the grooves of this record. And you might think, well, surely they're playing what's been aired on television? So it may not sound exactly the same, but familiar enough, right? Wrong. The music on here is not from the television. Absolutely none of it. When looking at the back of the record, you get an in-depth blurb about the album itself and a bit about the performers. It kicks off with the following. The leader of the band, Pete Winslow, was born in England on an undisclosed date and at the age of 6 moved to the island of... Whoa, hang on a minute. An undisclosed date? That doesn't sound mysterious whatsoever. What are you hiding, Mr. Winslow? After more information about Pete's upbringing and his career in music, the text reads as follows. The selection of music from Pete's broadcasts on this album, as the title suggests, is in the style that BBC Television uses for test transmissions. Although for various reasons the actual TV test card music is not available to the public, we get a lot of inquiries about it, and this is the sound that could indeed easily be the test card music. So there's the truth, folks. This is, in some ways, a sound-alike album. Music that could appear on the test card, not taken from it directly. Also, again, what is with this ominous sentencing? For various reasons, the test card music is not available to the public? Well, why not? You're just going to leave that there with no explanation whatsoever? Infuriating blurbs aside, let's have a little listen to what's actually on this album. The first track is called King Size Test Card, and the blurb on the back of the sleeve says that it takes in one of Pete's ambitions to actually own a 36-inch screen television set and a room big enough to view it in. Well, I don't know if Pete's still alive, but if he saw some of the tellies you can get now, he may be in for a bit of a heart attack. The rest of this video will be me playing the tracks on the record for you, and then giving my thoughts. I'll leave time-coded chapters in the description, so if you don't want to listen to any of these songs in full, you can skip ahead to the next one. Anyhow, here is the first track on the LP. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Well, that was certainly a way to kick things off. Tell you what, if I heard this on a king-size TV, with the test card glaring at me whilst this is blaring, I don't know whether I'd be fascinated or horrified. The tone is very jovial though, and indeed definitely something that could have appeared on the test card itself. On to track number 2 then, this is Mextet. That certainly leans into the Tijuana sound this record seems to be going for. Tijuana is a city in Mexico, but it also was a cultural hotspot for this kind of brassy sound, one that Pete took a strong liking to as a musician. Next up is a track called Java, which according to the record sleeve is of course the music associated with the popular television program Vision On. Oh really? Let's have a listen. Java was indeed used as the closing theme for hit children's programme Vision On, just not this version. Java was originally devised in the 1950s and actually made the top 5 of the Billboard Hot 100 over in the US in 1964. Winslow and his band's version is nice, again giving off those sunny, summery vibes, much like what we've heard so far. Onwards now to the sickly sweet titled Your Smiles. Well, that certainly felt slightly more contemporary compared to what we've heard thus far. I think the title doesn't really come across here, and there are some sounds featured that definitely feel very early 70s. Nothing grand, nothing horrific. A lot of these tracks are like that. But then again, so were many of the tracks actually featured during the Test Cards broadcasts, in my opinion. Anyhow, next is Birds of Aston, which the blurb claims is not a tribute to the football team. Sorry, Aston Villa fans. These are feeling more familiar, yet more surreal by the minute, don't you think? I mean, the blurb does say he composed this while stuck in a broken down car during a snowstorm, though this is not the kind of music I'd be thinking of were I in that situation. Let's move on to track number 6, Adaleta. Pleasant. Most pleasant. The further we go on, whilst I can't deny the easy listening nature of this record, I find I have less and less to say, as many of these tracks to me, at least, just feel too familiar. This may all well change with the penultimate track of side 1, Menorcan Mardi Gras, which supposedly has quite the history. The blurb tells us that Pete Winslow wrote this track instrumentally, was heard in a car by singer Frankie Vaughan, who liked it so much he got lyrics commissioned for it, and the song ended up in the top 20. I'm not sure if that's strictly true though. His discography on Wikipedia claims the song didn't chart anywhere and was released in 1969. The official UK charts website, which chronicles songs as far back as 1952, lists his more recent charting single as Nevertheless, released in early 1968 and only peaking at number 29. If Hideaway did make the top 20, I'm not sure where or what chart this was. Anyhow, let's listen to its inspiration. Well, that was fun. Hideaway may be an obscure track from Frankie Vaughan, but you can find him performing it on the 1969 Morecambe and Wise Christmas show, with some rather questionable dance moves. You can hear the inspiration from the original instrumental, so at least Frankie was happy, at the very least.
Haven't I told you, it's the funniest feeling, hot when you're so appealing, I will never control it, so come on, heart and soul it.
But now we come to the final track of side 1, Take Your Time. This is apparently a tribute to Danish entertainer Christian Kong, who travelled across Europe throwing up heart-shaped signs encouraging motorists to take their time. The money he gathered to do this was from playing in Copenhagen's famous Tivoli Gardens. Having visited Tivoli, it's truly something you've got to see for yourself if you can. Here's the track that pays a salute to him and his work. A nice little way to round off the first side. This was probably the most jovial of the lot for me, and given my connection to Copenhagen after visiting, I'd recommend this one entirely. Side 2 kicks off with the title track, Girl on the Test Card, and the blurb pays a tribute to the star of the slide herself. It comments that Carol, the girl, a lady, as she is now, whose face has become as familiar to the public as to the television engineers across the country who spend their time adjusting the image of her face to perfection. Proving even by 1973, just 6 years into the long legacy of Test Card F, Carol and Bubbles were well and truly household staples. I made a full documentary on Test Card F some years ago, so go and check that out if you want to learn more about its general history. Well, that was a nice smooth tribute to one of the most iconic images on TV. I really enjoy the low-key nature of this one, as opposed to anything too loud and bombastic. We may get the opposite with the next track though, Los Reyes del Bronce, which translates roughly to the King of the Brass. Let's have a listen. That was indeed brassy. Some more contemporary sounds in there too, but does it live up to the name? I wouldn't say so, but I know absolutely nothing about brass music. Now, Saturday nights were a big part of the television experience here in Britain for decades. Let's see if the next track would fit into that mould, as it's titled Saturday Sounds. Not the kind of Saturday I was expecting. This is more the kind of sounds you'd hear when going to some sort of luxury club on a Saturday night or something like that. Though to be fair, like most of the tracks on here, I could see this being used with the test card during some downtime at the weekend. Moving on now to a more melancholic sounding title, Waiting in the Rain. Well, that was the complete opposite of what I was expecting. With a title like Waiting in the Rain, I was expecting something a bit more mellow, or even just a bit more slow-paced at the very least. What we hear is just fine, like many tracks on the LP, but come on, tell me I wasn't the only one expecting something a little less bombastic with a title like Waiting in the Rain. Anyhow, moving on to the penultimate track of the album, titled 625405. For anyone with an interest in TV history, the reference here should be registered straight away. 625 refers to the new standard the BBC adopted with the launch of BBC Two and also the launch of colour, allowing for greater resolution and definition in what audiences would see on screen. 405 refers to the original standard the Beeb had been using for decades, and continued to use in gradually reduced capacity all the way until 1985. I did a little mini doc on 405 line broadcasting as well, so check that out if you're interested. But given the basis for the title, what on earth would the track sound like? Well, like this. If you were hoping for something a bit more electronic sounding, then remember, this is an album performed largely by a brass band. For me, it's one of those tracks that I'll probably forget about by the time I finish recording this script. Shame really, given the intriguing title. Intriguing for us TV nerds anyway. So, we've made it, the final track. This is the longest at over 5 minutes long, so strap yourselves in for Space Chariots. Yes, Space Chariots. Okay, so that had like vague space undertones, but in my opinion, space music is often best summarised with the use of more electronic sounds and instruments. It can work with a brass band, of course, it's just a personal preference thing. But that does bring us to the end of this album, at long last. Girl on the Test Card isn't one of the standout albums of its kind, not by a long shot. Granted, its release is novel given the prominence of the Test Card iconography, but always a little disappointing that it's not made up of tracks heard on TV. However, not to brush aside Pete Winslow and the King Size Brass, for what they put up here is nice to listen to, for sure. Obviously, this kind of music is like Marmite for some people, but to have on in the background whilst working, as I've done with it, lent itself to a very pleasant listening experience. Decades later, in the mid-90s, a CD was released entitled Test Card Classics, and from my understanding, this disc actually does contain music that was used alongside the test card, noting that they were previously unreleased. So if you'd like to hear what's on there, you can easily find one of these CDs for a couple of quid. As for this LP, it's slowly creeping up in value as time goes on, but you should be able to grab a copy for little over a tenner. It may not be groundbreaking, but I think the last part of the blurb, all of which had been written by album producer Steve Allen, summarises things quite aptly. In a way, Pete Winslow has come full circle. Having spent some of his childhood in Granada, it is perhaps fitting that this album musically suggests the summer warmth of the Caribbean. And for me at least, and perhaps you too, that kind of vibe is what this album serves up in bucket loads. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Sean Knock, Dord Khan, Liam Domain, AJ Mac 200017, Deck, Jen, Traffy, Evanhart 42 Radio, Tim Ripley, Mr. Eurovision 1986, Marnanel Thurman, John Wakefield, 40-something Manchild, Jerry Ralph, John McLeod, James Wallace, Ben, Stephen Oliver, Tegan, Shadowfiend 180X, Swan Ronson, Adam Gamer, Fonzie Daz, Seraphic Euphoria, Real Random, John, Matthew Elif, Pigeon's House, and Shah H, our AMTV staff members.
Where am I?
You're everywhere.
I suppose I am, really.